It's the owner of the agency's assistant. He would like to take you to lunch. He saw your tape and he thinks you've got something. Turns out the lunch was actually a dinner and it was a little bit like,
I was going to say this is sounding like a bit of impropriety, but I wasn't going to open my
Well, I was hoping it wasn't going to be, but it does. So yes, so I did accept the dinner because I was so excited and I was still very green. And then during dinner, my spidey senses kind of went up and I thought, oh, he says he sees there's a lot of talent in me, but now this is going like, an old Hollywood movie of
casting couch.
I'm just not sure. So when he asked if I wanted to go to the next location, I said, I have a date with my boyfriend. I need to get going. But I will say he's a great guy. And I now have been with the agency for 23 years. However, but back then, this is now right out of college. I wasn't with the agency. He takes me to this dinner. And I said, you know what? I knew that I wanted to keep the relationship up, that I wanted to make sure it maintained a professional air. So I had lunch with him, and only lunch, no more dinners, twice a year for the next about 6 years, until I get a call one day. I was in a meeting, he says, with my now new second in command, who saw you on the Access Hollywood show on AMC, and we want to have you come in because I think it's finally time to represent you. And I brought him my newly edited, updated reel of all my different shows I'd done. And he said, it's time. And that was it. I called my other agent. I said, we're done. I wasn't very happy with her at the moment anyway. And they've been my agents for 23 years.
So at what point, so this is clawing your way up the ladder and you're doing exactly what you need to do.
And I have really short nails, so that clawing is hard.
And what people really need to hear is the power of maintaining relationships. Also the power of you never know who's in the room. That's how I got my first job. I got my first job in PR, by the way, I was basically doing an interview for an equestrian publication. I was a journalist for equestrian magazines. I was interviewing my friend, Georgina Bloomberg, who's Michael Bloomberg's daughter. And there was a woman behind me and she was saying, excuse me. Like she was trying to get a picture of Georgina. And I was like, and Georgina was like, oh God, I hate this woman. Could you just block her? I was like, yeah, no problem. She's my real life friend. And I did one of these. And the woman reaches out, she goes, excuse me. And she pinches me. And I turned around, I said, no, you excuse me. I'm here with an equestrian publication. This is an equestrian event. I don't know who you are, but when I'm done doing my interview with Miss Bloomberg, you may ask her if you can take her picture. And I turned back around.
Good for you.
So then I walk in, my friend Scott is my gunkle, who's, and he's in charge of all the sponsorships and the fancy stuff. I was like, Scott, who's that woman in the, Chanel suit and the big tacky hat? He's like, oh, that's Peggy Siegel. You should get in with her if you ever want to do PR. And I was like, got it. So I pick up my head and I walk down the VIP tent and I'm like, Miss Siegel, I think we got off the wrong foot. But she goes, no, I like you. You're a bitch. And I was like,
oh no.
Okay. I was like, I'm really looking for an internship. And she goes, be in my office on Monday. And that was my first job in PR. I was still in college.
Oh my gosh.
But the point is I could have been embarrassed about how that went and put my tail between my legs and never stuck out my hand and she could have been like, fuck off.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which she kind of halfway did, but it worked to my advantage. So point being, relationships are everything. Watering the flowers of those relationships is what gets us our careers. So when did this, because obviously I know you from all of these shows. I kind of forgot that I knew you from all those shows. I remember watching you on all of those shows. But Entertainment Tonight and Dancing with the Stars are obviously these two iconic institutions, and also Chicago. So in what order and how did that happen? And tell me just a little bit about that, because that's most people who want to be in television stream.
I feel so grateful that I have been able to be part of really history for television. When Dancing with the Stars was on and I was, still on. I don't know if it's ever going anywhere. It's amazing. But when I hosted the show, seasons 2 through 9, this was the heyday for the show. We were second only to American Idol in the total number of viewers ever watching television.
It was 25 million viewers, right?
Yeah, I remember there were nights we'd always have a morning meeting every day before we'd go into rehearsals and then the live show later. And we had, the results show. Mm-hmm. And so when we'd come back from the results show, the first thing everyone would say was, what were the numbers for the performance show? Which is, obviously when all the dancers are competing and then we have the results the next time. And if it dipped below, this is so lame, but if it dipped below 20 million people, we're like, oh oh my gosh, we're
right.
doomed. This is awful. Because this was a
crazy.
time where we had 20 to 30 million people on average watching. And it was a really exciting time in television. When appointment television
Yeah.
was there, where
Yeah.
families were
Yep.
gathering
Yep.
to watch a live show. And to have a live show, not just a show, but because there's appointment television for people who wanted to watch Friends and Will and
Sure.
Grace back to back. And that was
Yeah,
appointment
of course.
known as appointment
Sure.
television. But live appointment television was a whole other animal. So it was really exciting to be part of that. And so now taking you back. So my new agents got me the opportunity to meet with the executive producers at Extra. So I became the weekend host and a full-time correspondent. And unfortunately, after a year, my contract, in this business, you are only renewed by their desire, right? You can sign a 6-year contract, but it has renewals every so often. So every year was up for renewal. So it always feels like a firing, but it's not like you get fired out in the middle of nowhere. It's just that they decide, usually it's budgetary, to be honest, which is frustrating, but a lot of times it's budgetary or a different, quote unquote, direction they want to go, right? So anyhow, I was only at Extra for a year and my contract was up and it didn't get renewed. And thankfully, my awesome agents already had positioned me to be considered for a new job at E! News. I knew that they'd been looking for a new correspondent and fill-in anchor for months because I would be on the red carpet. And every time I was on the red carpet, there'd be a different correspondent for E! Because they were trying out so many people. And so I finally had that opportunity to do quite the tryout. And I think the reason that I was able to nab the job was because a lot of the girls that were coming on were just, a face that looked good for the show. But they didn't know how to write. They didn't know how to edit. They didn't know how to produce themselves. They didn't know how to actually carry an interview. And that's where going back to Northwestern and making sure, and that's why I didn't major. I was actually a double major in theater, but the journalism school was kind of snooty there. They wouldn't acknowledge my double major. So I graduated with a journalism degree, but I didn't major only in theater because my thought was, if you're a good actor, you're a good actor. You can have the best training in the world, but they're not going to give you the job because you went to that amazing, Yale Theater School or Juilliard. Because you're the best actor for the job. So, but with journalism, that's a whole different, there's a skill set as well as a talent part, right? So I really felt it was important to understand the skill set. And I tell it to my girls all the time, I just want to make a lot of money as an influencer. I'm like, no. If you become an influencer because you already have some other talent or skill, that's amazing and then gets you eyeballs, great. But I don't want you to just have this desire to be an influencer and where's the skill? Where's the talent?
And one day that bubble's going to burst.
Gosh, it's frightening how much, you never know, but it's going to, it's right. Everything's in a cycle.
You got to have something to back. That's what I always say. Because as you know, you took my course, I teach a course and people,
it's a great course.
I speak on panels a lot on how to be an influencer and people say, how do I? And I say, don't just want to be an influencer. You need to be influencing with backing. What is the backing? What is your expertise? What is your passion?
Right.
What have you studied? What have you curated? And I think there's going to be a lot of women in a really bad predicament in whatever the number of years is when this turns to the next thing.
Right.
And they never learned a discernible skill.
Well, and that's what I think. And I'm going to take a moment to do a PSA for Jamie's Brand Ninja course because it's freaking amazing. Because everyone out there who has any sort of following says, well, okay, I'm just going to reach out to a brand and say, hey, want to do a collaboration? And by the way, I was also that person going, well, okay, gosh, I might as well reach out and say, you want to do a collaboration? And then when I took your Brand Ninja course and I see what you have done, and I will say, you also have this incredible background in PR. So you know how to put together a whole template and deck for a brand. You understand how to structure an event or structure a deal. So I think that part is in your skill set. That's really amazing. And yet there are so many things that I would have never thought of had I not taken the Brand Ninja course with you, which is how to present something rather than just saying, hey, let's collaborate. It's more about here are the things we should do to collaborate and approach it as a business. And I think the best influencers are probably doing that to some degree or another, but maybe not with the same attention to detail and follow through as you do and as you really purport in Brand Ninja. So
yeah, well, we all have our spaces. So you were doing this obviously in the entertainment reporting space, and that's what snagged you your next job, it sounds like.